Have you ever had a quiet moment where something inside you whispers that the life you're living doesn't quite feel like yours? A strange, subtle sense that the choices you've made, the paths you follow, the goals you chase, the emotions you hide, were shaped long before you ever questioned whether they belong to you at all. Most people ignore that whisper. They bury it beneath noise, schedules, obligations, screens, and expectations. But for a rare few, that whisper grows louder. It becomes a pulse, a calling, a gentle discomfort that becomes impossible to silence. That's where the journey truly begins. Because nothing in your life changes until you ask one of the most dangerous questions a human being can ask. Who am I really, beneath everything I've been told to be? It's a question that sounds simple, but it cracks open the foundation of your identity. And once you ask it, you cannot unask it. You begin to notice things you were blind to before. You begin to see the roles you've been playing. You begin to see how much of your life was shaped by forces outside your control. Think about it for a moment. From the moment you were born, the world began handing you pieces of an identity. You were given a name before you could speak. You were assigned a role before you could walk. You were taught what is good, what is bad, what is acceptable, what earns approval, what deserves punishment. You learned to smile to avoid conflict, to stay quiet to avoid rejection, to behave in ways that kept you safe, even if they distanced you from yourself. And slowly, without even realizing it, you built a version of yourself that fit the world around you, not the world within you. You became who you were rewarded for being, not who you truly were. You became a reflection of other people's expectations, not the expression of your authentic self. By the time you reached adulthood, you were carrying a carefully crafted identity, one that might look stable and successful on the outside but feels incomplete, hollow, or constrained on the inside. Carl Jung called this facade the persona. It is the mask you show the world. It is the part of you that knows how to act, respond, and perform. But here's the truth most people never realize. The persona isn't who you are. It's who you learn to become. And the moment you confuse the mask for your real self, you lose access to the deeper layers of your mind, the hidden truth beneath the performance. Somewhere inside you, a different self has been quietly waiting. A self that carries your unlived life. A self that remembers all the things you suppress to fit in. A self that knows what you truly want, what you genuinely feel, and who you could be if you stopped living for approval. That hidden self is what Jung called the shadow. And despite how frightening the name sounds, the shadow is not your darkness. It is your incompleteness. It is everything you pushed away. Your vulnerability, your intuition, your creativity, your anger, your truth, your desires, your sensitivity, even your hidden talents. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the part of you you have not met yet. And until you meet it, you cannot know yourself. Most people will never meet their shadow. They spend their entire lives running from discomfort, using work, entertainment, relationships, and endless distractions to avoid looking inward. It's easier to stay busy than to question your identity. It's easier to blame circumstances than to confront the self. It's easier to keep wearing the persona than to admit that you've outgrown it. But something extraordinary happens the moment you allow yourself to look within. Your illusions crack, your programming loosens, your truth begins to surface. And for the first time in your life, you begin to realize that you've been living in a cage that was built for you, not by you. Every fear you took as your own, every limitation you believed in, every belief you inherited, every voice that told you who you should be, all of it formed the outer layer of your identity. But beneath that layer, something ancient and powerful has been calling you home. It's the signal of your deeper self, the part of you that existed before the world shaped you, before opinions defined you, before expectations contained you. This journey is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. But this path is not easy. The first thing you must confront is the discomfort of truth, and truth rarely presents itself gently. It shows up as inner conflict, as confusion, as emotional triggers you can't explain, as dreams that disturb you, as patterns that repeat in your relationships, as periods of emptiness where the life you built suddenly feels too small. These aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that something inside you is waking up. You may begin to notice moments where your reactions feel too strong for the situation. That is the shadow trying to speak. You may notice parts of yourself you don't understand. Impulses, desires, fears. They are not flaws, they are messages. You may even feel a growing pull toward things that once scared you. Creativity, solitude, authenticity, change. This is the beginning of transformation, and transformation always starts with disruption. To find yourself, you must be willing to lose the version of you that the world created. You must be willing to question your beliefs, your habits, your attractions, your fears, your identity. You must be willing to ask, is this truly me? Or is this what I was taught to be? Most people never ask this, and that is why most people never truly meet themselves. But you are not most people. You're here, listening, imagining, questioning. You're standing at the threshold of a different kind of life, a life lived from the earth, inside out, not the outside in. Finding yourself is not a destination. It's a process, a journey inward, a return to your own center. And in the next session, we will explore the deeper forces inside you, the ancient psychological patterns, the inner archetypes, the unconscious energies that have guided your life in ways you never realized. This is where the real transformation begins. Before we continue, remember, stay with this journey. Stay with yourself, and stay with the quiet paradox. If the first step toward finding yourself is recognizing the mask you wear, then the second step is even more profound. Discovering the forces within you that have been shaping your identity from the shadows. You are not a blank canvas. You are a living mosaic of instincts, dreams, memories, impulses, wounds and potentials that have been carried across generations. And whether you've been conscious of them or not, they've been shaping your beliefs, your relationships, your emotions, and even your destiny. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He believed that every human being is born with a psychological blueprint, ancient patterns that live in the unconscious and influence the entire course of your life. He called them archetypes. You may not see them, but they are always present. You may not name them, but you feel them. You may not understand them, but they guide you from within. And once you begin to recognize these inner patterns, everything in your life starts to make sense in a way it never did before. Consider moments in your life when you felt called to something greater. That inner pull toward purpose, growth, responsibility, or becoming more than you are. That's the hero archetype stirring inside you. It's the part of you that refuses to settle for mediocrity. It's the part that knows you were meant to grow. But every hero must eventually face an opponent, not an enemy in the outer world, but the inner force that stands in the way of change. This opponent is the shadow archetype, the part of you that wants to stay comfortable, avoid failure, avoid pain, avoid reality. Every time you resisted change, even though you needed it, every time you sabotaged your own progress, every time you hesitated at the edge of transformation, it was the timeless struggle between the hero and the shadow playing out through you. This is not a flaw. This is the human condition. The hero seeks evolution. The shadow seeks safety. And your life becomes the battleground where these forces collide. But this is where most people misunderstand their inner world. They think the shadow represents their worst qualities. In truth, it represents their rejected qualities, their unclaimed strength, their buried courage, their suppressed authenticity. And until you face the shadow, you cannot fully step into the person you are meant to become. But the hero and the shadow are only two of many archetypes moving within you. There is also the innocent, the part of you that longs for simplicity, honesty, and the purity of being seen without judgment. It appears whenever you crave safety, softness, or a return to something untouched by the world's demands. There is the sage, the ancient part of you that seeks truth, wisdom, and clarity. It appears during your moments of insight, when you see beneath the surface of things, when you feel a quiet certainty that doesn't need validation. There is the rebel, the part that pushes back against conformity, that refuses to accept answers that feel untrue, that breaks rules not for the sake of breaking them, but for the sake of authenticity. There is the lover, the part of you that experiences beauty intensely, that longs for connection, that feels emotions in their full depth. There is the creator, the spirit within you that wants to bring something into existence, whether through art, language, movement, or ideas. These inner forces are not random. They are inherited patterns, psychological DNA passed down through centuries of human existence. They live inside you, guiding your path, whether you are aware of them or not. Understanding them is not about labeling yourself. It's about recognizing the complexity of who you are. Because when you don't understand your inner patterns, you feel conflicted, confused, fragmented, pulled in opposing directions without knowing why. But when you begin to recognize these archetypes, a powerful shift happens. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You begin to see yourself as layered. Each archetype plays a role at different stages of your life. Each archetype holds a lesson you've been avoiding. Each archetype unlocks a part of your inner potential. But the question now is deeper. If all these forces live within you, then who is the you watching them? Who is the observer behind the emotions, behind the impulses, behind the thoughts? Jung believed that beyond the persona, beyond the shadow, beyond the archetypes, there is a deeper presence, an inner center he called the self. Not the small ego self that tries to control everything, not the identity you show the world, but the totality of who you are. The self is the part of you that watches, the part that listens, the part that waits, the part that knows. It is the calm center behind your thoughts, the quiet awareness beneath your roles, the presence you feel when the world becomes silent and you sit with yourself without distraction. It is not shaped by society, childhood conditioning, or external approval. It simply exists. as the core of your being. But most people never meet this self. They live their entire lives trapped inside the persona, or fighting their shadow, or overwhelmed by unconscious archetypes. They live at the surface of their own mind. To find yourself, you must descend deeper into the realm where your true identity lives. This is where the journey becomes transformative. Because when you touch the deeper self, something begins to shift. You stop living reactively. You stop seeking validation. You stop chasing roles that were never meant for you. You stop fearing shadows that were never meant to hurt you. You begin to see life as a dialogue between your conscious choices and the unconscious forces moving within you. And instead of being controlled by them, you begin to work with them. You start to understand why you are drawn to certain people and repelled by others. You begin to understand why certain fears follow you through life. You begin to understand why certain patterns repeat no matter how hard you try to break them. You begin to understand where your deepest calling comes from. This is the beginning of individuation, the path towards psychological wholeness, the path toward becoming the truest, most integrated version of yourself. And yet, there is one more step, one more revelation, perhaps the most challenging and liberating of all. Because even with all the masks removed, all the shadows confronted, all the archetypes recognized, there remains one final illusion you must face. And in the final session, you will discover that the greatest barrier between you and your true self is not something you inherited, but something you've believed your entire life. Before we continue, take a breath. Reflect on what is awakening within you. You're halfway through the journey. When you're ready, say next session, and we continue together, here at the Quiet Paradox. There comes a moment on the inner journey where everything you thought you knew about yourself begins to feel strangely distant. The identity you've worn for years starts to loosen. The beliefs you once held with certainty no longer feel absolute. The emotions that used to define you begin to soften, revealing deeper layers beneath them. It can feel unsettling at first, almost like standing in a room where the furniture has quietly shifted overnight. But this disorientation is not a sign of losing yourself. It's the sign that you are finally meeting yourself. Because the final barrier between you and your true nature is not your past, not your wounds, not your fears, not your shadow. It is the assumption that the you you've always experienced is the real you. It's an assumption so deeply rooted that most people never question it. They think they are their thoughts. They think they are their emotions. They think they are their personality, their preferences, their opinions, their habits, their impulses. But these are just expressions of the psyche, not the core of your being. The ego, the small I that tries to control everything, lives by convincing you that it is the whole of who you are. It narrates your experiences, labels your feelings, assigns meaning to events, and creates a running commentary on every moment of your life. But have you ever noticed that the voice inside your head is not always accurate, not always kind, not always rational, not always truthful? And yet, for most of your life, you accepted this voice without question. You believed it because it sounded like you. But here is the final revelation on the path inward. Just because a voice speaks within you does not mean it is you. This realization is both liberating and terrifying. Because once you realize you are not your thoughts, you must confront a deeper question. If I am not my thoughts, then who am I? That question leads you into the quiet center of your being, where a different kind of awareness lives. An awareness that doesn't judge, doesn't label, doesn't react. It simply observes. It watches thoughts come and go like passing clouds. It witnesses emotions rise and fall like waves on a shore. It remains unchanged through every inner storm, untouched by time, untouched by trauma, untouched by identity. This awareness is what Jung pointed to when he spoke of the self, the totality of the psyche, the deeper intelligence within you, the part that exists beyond ego, beyond persona, beyond shadow. Most people never reach this place. They live inside the noise of their mind their entire lives, pulled by thoughts they never questioned, shaped by patterns they never understood, guided by impulses they never examined. But when you begin to see that you are the observer behind the mind, everything shifts. You begin to understand that the ego is simply one part of you, necessary, functional, but not sovereign. It is meant to be a servant, not a master. When the ego rules, your life becomes limited. When the deeper self rules, your life becomes aligned. And alignment is the final stage of the inner journey. Alignment doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean eliminating flaws or transcending emotion. It means living from the core of your being instead of the surface. It means choosing authenticity over approval. It means acting from awareness instead of fear. It means allowing your life to unfold from the inside out. To reach this place, you must let go of one more illusion. The illusion that you must become someone. Transformation is not about becoming anything. It is about undoing everything that is not truly you. You do not need to add more layers. You need to shed them. You need to peel back the persona. You need to meet the shadow. You need to listen to your archetypes. You need to see the ego with clarity. You need to recognize the difference between your mind and your awareness. And when you do, something profound emerges. A sense of inner spaciousness, a quietness that feels like truth rather than silence, a feeling of connection, not to the world outside you, but to the world within you. This connection is not dramatic or loud. It doesn't arrive like a revelation. It unfolds slowly, gently, organically, like dawn breaking over the horizon. You begin to make choices differently. You speak differently. You respond differently. You view your past differently, not as something to escape, but as something that shaped you into someone capable of depth. You feel emotions differently, not as obstacles, but as signals. You see your wounds differently, not as weaknesses, but as teachers that brought you closer to yourself. And in moments of stillness, you may sense something you can't fully articulate. A quiet inner knowing that you are no longer searching for yourself because you have finally stopped running from yourself. From this place, relationships shift. You no longer seek people to complete you. You seek those who resonate with you. You no longer cling to others out of fear. You connect out of clarity. You no longer accept love that requires you to shrink. You allow only what meets you at your depth. Your life becomes simpler, but not smaller. In fact, it expands in ways the persona could never imagine. Because the freedom of being yourself is unlike any other form of freedom. It is the freedom to speak authentically, to feel fully, to exist without disguise, to live without performing, to walk without pretending, to choose without apologizing, to be without justifying. You realize finally That finding yourself was never about creating a new identity. It was about reclaiming the one you abandoned, the one that existed before the world shaped you, the one that knew who you were long before you forgot. And in that realization, the journey doesn't end. It simply changes shape. Because knowing yourself is not a destination. It is a lifelong unfolding, a deepening, a remembering, a returning. You will continue to meet new parts of yourself. You will continue to evolve, transform, shed, and grow. You will continue to walk deeper into your own inner landscape, discovering truths that reveal themselves only to those willing to look inward. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this journey is that it never truly ends, because you are a living, breathing mystery. Not a fixed identity, not a static personality, but an ever unfolding expression of consciousness trying to understand itself. And now, after everything you've uncovered, you finally stand at the place where transformation becomes possible. Not through force, but through awareness. You have met your persona. You have faced your shadow. You have recognized your archetypes. You have detached from the voice of the ego, and you have touched the deeper self. This is where the true journey of your life begins, quietly, authentically, and entirely from within.